I'm joined now by Seth Schachner from Los Angeles via Skype. He's managing director of Strat America, as a consulting firm for clients in media and tech. So, Seth, a lot of back and forth these past few weeks. We keep seeing these deadlines, and U.S. judges have been ruling in TikTok's favor. So, were you surprised by that? And what's your read on this?
Well, good evening, Elaine. It's nice to be here. I don't know if I was surprised by it per se. I mean, there has been, just a ton of back and forth and, plenty of kind of miscommunications and contrary communications really on both sides. So, my read is that I think it's fair to say that ByteDance and TikTok probably are angling and need some time, essentially. And I think that's what part of what last night's order was all about, because I think a ban, at least at the App Store level, would have really disrupted and hurt the business. But I think it's also fair to say that there are some legitimate, concerns around data and security, basically, that probably need to be addressed. And, the latest iteration of a new ownership structure, which has been called TikTok Global, I don't think really it's fair to say has been ironed out or thought out yet, in a coherent way. So I think until that is really perhaps more clearly communicated, the ownership structure, that we're likely to see just kind of more confusion and more back and forth, essentially.
And part of that is do you think they're just trying to move at a very fast pace, or running into these deadlines? They're just really rushing through things. Where do things stand with Oracle right now, and how do you see that playing out?
Well, yes, it's fair to say that this has been somewhat rushed. I mean, an election's coming, and there's certainly some adversarial top-level competitive factors probably driving that. It's also fair to say that there isn't a technology policy or strategy around privacy domestically or internationally on the U.S. side that's kind of governing this. But in terms of what was announced with Oracle and Walmart being part of a new entity called TikTok Global, that felt like it was somewhat of a positive development in terms of kind of perhaps resolving the crisis, if you will, a bit. But at the same time, there's kind of conflicting statements from China as well as from the U.S. in terms of the ownership structure. And I think it's plausible that if that doesn't kind of get worked out or clearly communicated, that the thing could fall apart, essentially. So I think for it to happen, it'd be good to hear who the owners are on both sides, kind of clearly making a rationale for that in terms of the management structure and the ownership interest, and perhaps that'll help move it forward.
That's right. They have to meet Chinese requirements as well as U.S. requirements.
Right.
Let's sidestep and look at WeChat, the popular messaging app, which a lot of people see as a digital communications bridge between many people in China and the United States. How do you see that playing out?
Well, that's a different thing. It's obviously smaller, and just reflecting on it, looking at it, I think it serves a different purpose. Some have called it a Swiss Army knife that has e-commerce and all sorts of other communication capabilities in it. And I think that was the reprieve that came from a judge here on the West Coast, came around the area of free speech, essentially, as opposed to kind of a different scenario in the first case with TikTok. And so I think that's kind of an important consideration, because software does have First Amendment protections to it, and I think that's part of the considerations that came there in terms of the reprieve, basically. But again, a lot of these same conditions in terms of security, data, are being cited, as part of the reason why that shutdown was asked for.
And of course, we have this other harder deadline of November 12th, which comes after the U.S. election. So hypothetically, if we see a new president elected here in the United States who still will not come into office until January, how are these Chinese tech companies trying to survive and work through that, looking at a possible leadership change? I mean, do they still survive, or there's sort of this gray area?
Well, look, I don't know if this is all about who's president. Actually, I think there's an important set kind of principles here in terms of how markets work. And I think perhaps if you're looking at investing in a Chinese company or partnering with it, and at least in the present environment until January, if something is likely to catch the ire or catch the attention of something that could cause complications, that could have a pretty tough effect on driving your business. And I also think from the American side, from our side, it could have just the reverse effects for our companies abroad actually as well. So I think that's kind of a probably one of the toughest questions here throughout all this back and forth, particularly because I don't see coherent sort of overarching technology policy or strategy to point to basically as to why these actions are taking. So it's not necessarily very positive, and I don't know if you can really put anything concrete, in terms of an argument for what a new administration's policy would be like just yet. It's probably too early.
All right, great insight, Seth Schachner. Thank you so much for joining us from Los Angeles.
Great to be with you, Elaine. Thank you.